Right, I'm going to shift the topic a little today. Yes, the finding a product market fit within a DAO governance model is like a subset of it. I think today I'm going to expand the scope a little more. Today I'm going to introduce about Global DAO Alliance and how it got from 0 to global in 6 months with 400 high-impact contributors worldwide. Many of them senior executives at high-speed growing tech startups and heavy-hitting financial firms. But before I dive into how we did it in 6 months, let me share a little more about myself on top of what she actually shared. Okay, the bulk of my professional career, I've been focusing on network effects, studying how network effects work, and researching how to actually use it. For example, to grow the social network I was part of from 10 million users to 100 million users shortly before I left. So yeah, during that period of time, right, well, Edmodo, maybe let me just give you a quick introduction. It's one of the largest social networks in the world for K12 teachers, students, and parents. So it's a very impactful platform. So after the company got sold off in 2018, I went and pursued a different subject that was kind of related to what I was doing back in Edmodo, because as the head of growth, I was literally running a whole bunch of human psychology experiments on our users, and that kind of tied very deeply into this whole fake news trend that was gaining momentum ever since 2016. So during this period of time, when I was no longer in the company, I literally traversed the globe, overland, seeing what was actually happening on the grounds, and then going and read the news to say, hey, what's actually reported, right? To see what the discrepancy was. And you'd be really surprised, right? It's you go read New York Times or some of the articles, it's whoo hoo hoo. Penning is this city is kind of blowing up crazy with all the riots. But when I drove my car there and literally parked there and walked around town, what I observed was for every rioter there was literally 3 reporters covering the rioters. So it was really mind-boggling, right? And my goal and intent was to actually train an AI model eventually to help me decipher this article. Is it real or is it just fake news? Now, as a byproduct of that, at the height of the pandemic back in 2020, March, I had this moment of eureka, right? It's suddenly one day you're kind of walking around blind and then you put on these glasses and you had the eye of the oracle, It's like that. So the insight was, to get around fake news, you remove the narrative. Every single article you read is framed in a specific way to actually influence your understanding of the world. Be it after I read this, I'm going to support this cause, I'm going to go against that cause. If you kind of cut it all out and just simply focus on the news headlines, and then tokenize it, pull out the nouns, right, and turn that into a data feed, for example, you have a very nice time series, right? For example, that blue curve over there, which is the mention of the coronavirus mentions at the pandemic. And that yellow curve that you see, right, is actually the price of the S&P during the pandemic itself. And you see, hey, there's a very clear, nice, negative correlation. So if you're kind of about to deploy a few $billion into the markets, you actually look at the blue curve, it's yeah, sentiment has kind of reversed. All in, guys, all in. Don't leave any money on the table, just all in. All right. So with this insight in mind, me being the somewhat pseudo-scientist that I am, just looking at this on the charts, it's it's nice. Okay, what next? I have no idea. But, during that period of time, I was reading a whole bunch of books, right, about complex systems and network effects, all right? And one of the recurring themes I came across when reading through all these books is that networks, once they gradually achieve critical mass, they start exhibiting these unpredictable emergent properties, right? And it's a lot of times, it's just think of this this like pile of snow, right? You drop one snow, this is a pile of snow, you drop more snow, it's a pile of snow. You do it like, say, a few like months, and then soon you have like a mountain of snow. You drop like one more snow, you think you're gonna have a bigger pile. No, you actually like have a fucking avalanche, right? Kaboom! That's like the emergent properties of network. So I figured, right, since we have this insight, why not like tap on this emergent property of networks as an experiment and build like a whole social network around like this insight and see what would happen out of it. Hence began my journey into the world of DAOs. It's like building a better world based on fundamental truth, right? Because I was trying to solve fake news and didn't really like know what the solution was. And the first member I went to talk to was Johnson. Johnson actually got me to just like sit put and don't do anything for a whole month, just focusing on one word: why. It's like people forget the importance of why, right? It's like when you look at all the social movements around the world, or the religions around the world, fundamentally it's always like this one single idea that expresses like why you should like put your human muscles behind it. And Okay, so once you like figure out the why, right, then the next question would be, okay, you go and recruit the who. Which brings us back to the age-old question, right? It's like, hey, you, me, we're going to work together, but how do we actually like split this equity, right? I was like, I know myself. I spent like 4 years like researching fake news, right? So I kind of like see myself as a subject matter expert with engineering background, product management background. Yeah, sure. I was like, hey, you join me. I own 90%, and you, small fry you, 10%. But guess what? It's like this one statement we are making is making a whole bunch of assumptions about the environment, that's one, and about the future. Imagine like 6 months down the road, right? It's like the environment changed and the future actually changed. I literally have been sitting 6 months on the beach, like doing nothing, just sipping margarita, and like the other guy that unfortunately agreed to like 10% equity was been working his ass off. It's like, yeah, I built this whole project. It's like, good job, man. I'm like, keep on drinking my margarita, and he like sees me like via Zoom. He's like, how motivated do you think is this? It's like, basically, it's just like this whole like project is gonna totally fall apart. It doesn't work. And then like next, right? It's like occasionally you bump into folks. They're really good at selling themselves. I was like, yeah, they sell you the moon, the Mars, Pluto. It's like, wow, this guy's really good, right? It's like, all right, I believe in your ability to execute. You give him 60%, right? 6 months down the road, nothing gets delivered. Man, it's like, what happens to the project? It dies. And when you just like take a simple look at Quora, this same problem plagues like the bulk of all these projects that's trying to get off the ground. And you think, oh man, this is like a really hard problem to solve. You know what? Just forget about it. Let's just go home. Let's just forget about the whole thing. But here's what. I recall this other book I read many years ago called The Founder's Dilemma by this like Harvard business professor, who proposed that, hey, let's not make assumptions about the future. Instead, let's like do everything based on 100% milestone-based fasting. Which seemed like an interesting idea, right? It's like, okay, let's just like try to implement this. Hence, the ledger was created. All right? So for every single person that actually wants to come in and contribute, it's like, great, we'll put your name on the ledger, and we'll put like what you committed to doing on the ledger. And then we like say, okay, for each shares, we just evaluate at $1. So whatever you're going to contribute, like go out into the market, see how much it actually costs to get something like this delivered, and we'll provision the same exact amount for you on the ledger. Total transparency, right? Everyone else that comes into the DAO can see, okay, okay, sure, reasonable. And then it also promotes like accountability. Here's why, right? It's like 6 months down the road, if the person actually doesn't like deliver anything, well, the shares has been provisioned, but he doesn't actually get any shares. Accountability and transparency. That's great. Now, what we decided to do next was that everything's like kind of sitting on the Google Sheet, right? We thought, let's make it like a little more serious by actually minting coins. And then we say, okay, once like you finish your work, we will periodically like transfer it's kind of like once you finish, we just like airdrop like your tokens to your wallet, and then now it like starts becoming tangible. Here's the interesting thing, right? It's like wasn't apparent at first, but as we like went around this process, what started becoming obvious is this. if you are a new potential member that you usually like, they're not aware they're kind of like joining the DAO, right? They come and they start contributing their insights, right? Because insights actually like things that you like spend time like coming to like acquire. Right? You like contribute your insight, and then, well, that's actually contribution, right? And later on, the DAO is like saying, oh, that insight was really impactful for a DAO. Then we record it on the ledger, and at the same time, it's like saying, hey, you, yes, you. No, not anyone, but you, right? You contributed, right? Give me your Solana wallet. We airdrop you some tokens, right? So this is kind of like unexpected token appreciation, right? It comes as a surprise. And they feel like, oh, wow, I'm being appreciated for my time and effort just thinking through this. It's like, oh, something new. So when you like kind of build this like fully out, it fully conforms to the hook model. Let me like walk you through like how this hook model works and how like the whole human psychology works, right? You come in, you do some stuff, you don't really know like what you're getting into, and then suddenly you get this reward, right? Which is like, okay, token, you get it, okay, that's great. And then like, okay, I feel happy about it, dopamine rush, right? And then at the same time, you kind of like establish yourself, your social reputation in this DAO, because like it's on the ledger. Everyone sees that, okay, this person actually contributed, right? And then if you're internally driven, it's like, okay, how can I actually get more reward, right? Then you go like through like this cycle and like keep on contributing and getting more tokens and like building up your status in the DAO itself. But if you're actually not very active, here's what I observe happening a lot of times. 2 to 3 project members working on this initiative, and then like suddenly one of them says, hey, we need some designs for this. And then it's like 3 of them look at each other, it's like, none of us are designers. It's like, oh, okay. Then it's like one of them recalls, hey, we have a friend, right, that actually is really good at a designer. Just go talk to him, drag him in, and next thing you know, he's actually like dragged into the hook model itself, right? Because it's like, okay, what do you need? Oh, okay, right, design. Does a contribution, get some token, and then it's like, oh, now I have a status in the DAO. So this is how the whole hook model works. Now, to further like enhance this effect that we observe, right, and to like kind of amp up the whole gamification aspects, we just created like this whole governor ranking system, whereby without even like doing too much math, you just go and like immediately see, oh wow, I actually rank like as like number 10 right now, right? And who's above me and who's before me, right? There's like this like friendly competition going on that actually like makes like the whole like thing even more like fun, right? Now, from the other aspects, it's like we also, this like whole ranking system, because the tokens directly equate to how much voting weightage you have in the DAO, literally we have introduced like game theory, right? Prisoner's dilemma into the whole framework. So if you contribute more, imagine like 2 members, member A and B. One person actually contributes and the other does not. So relatively speaking, person A, his level would go up, no? And it's like saying, next time I want to propose some stuff because I've been contributing, my weight carries more vote, right? It's like, okay, it passes through more likely. But imagine the 2 of them actually contributes, right? Then their voting weightage goes up equally. Then the rank would kind of like stay the same, right? Then maybe if I'm feeling more competitive, it's like, fuck, I'll actually work more than you tomorrow, just to kind of kick your ass even more, right? Or it's like maybe sometimes the DAO goes through like some cycles. It's like, it's Christmas. Guys, just forget about this game for a while. Let's just spend time with our family. And then like the DAO kind of like takes a break. And then like the ranking stays the same. That's like how like game theory works, right? It's like, it's also designed to be self-balancing, right? Because like maybe me, I'm the person that started this whole thing. I might have some skill sets, right? But as the DAO progresses through like some of its life cycle, and well, it actually gets to the stage whereby it's like, you know what, we don't really need engineers. We need like someone that's actually strong with partnerships or strong with like strategy. Then that person will have more opportunity to contribute than me. And in that case, during that phase, that person will probably acquire more tokens than I do, right? Is it good? I think it's actually good for the DAO. And then it's like, at the same time, I don't really have to struggle too much, right? Trying to pick up like a skill set I'm probably like not really interested in picking up, which is good for everybody. Now, over time, when like this like a whole game dynamics is put in place, right? What we observed was that the volume of contribution coming to the DAO actually accelerates. And like with more data coming in, we realized that, hey, it's like there's like this different categories of like contributions. Let's try to see if we can like really standardize it. And as a result of that exercise, the rubric was created. So it helps like make the scoring, right? the allocation of like tokens even more transparent and more consistent, which is great. And then like more people can actually get involved in the scoring, even like people that's like not actively in the DAO, like more like independent parties. And yeah, this is how it works, right? Okay, Calvin decides that, hey, I want to actually like do some stuff about the core scoreboard, and then like the scribe would actually come in and say, this contribution falls under this category, and it should be provisioned 250 like tokens. Perfect, you know. Of course, a rubric is essentially the representation, right, of the environment, or the environment as we know it. The environment does change. So periodically, what happens is that, okay, as the DAO progresses into terrains, where the terrains like layout is not captured in the rubric, DAO members will actually like, hey, I want to challenge the rubric. Can we like update the line item over there? Can we add more line items in the rubric? Or, well, actually, like everything's like correct, but the scribe kind of like scored wrongly. So in response to this, we created the 3 branch of governance in a DAO. Essentially, you have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The executive branch, basically all the contributors are contributing my time and effort for tokens. The legislative branch, right now, what we have is like this independent like scribe DAO that comes in. They don't earn our tokens, but what they do is that they see all the activities, all the contribution in the server. And they say, okay, this contribution actually should be awarded that, right? And then periodically, when the rubric actually gets kind of like outdated, or like the legislator actually like does like the misclassification, then we like raise the appeal. And that's when like the judicial branch gets kicked in, right? Basically, DAO members that we know on the ledger has been historically like contributing to this category of contribution. And then they can come and say, do 3 things, right? Line item is missing, let's extend the rubric with 1 more line. Or it's like the shares or tokens for that line item is kind of like outdated, let's update that. Or pure misclassification, shouldn't be classified like that, should be classified like, no, the other way. And that's like how this like 3 branches work, right? So at a high level, this is how our governance model looks like. At the core of it, you have the ledger, and then on top of that, you have the rubric. You have the executives contributing and having their like, contributions recorded on the ledger. And then you have the legislative branch updating the ledger based on this contribution. And then they reference the rubric, and periodically when it's outdated, the executive triggers the judicial, and they update the rubric or say, hey, that needs to be reclassified. Make sense? Perfect. Now, let's examine the flip side of it, right, which is our economic model. Literally, like from start to finish, over this like 6 months, what you observe is that our DAO literally like kind of like layered in 4 different behavioral loops. At the very start, right, at the time where like Johnson says, hey, don't do anything else, just focus on the why, which is very important, right? It's like it forms the very core of our first loop, which is the value creation loop. In our case of TrueSight DAO, we're trying to build a better world based on fundamental truth. So any effort that you could do to drive like us closer to our purpose, mission, and vision, that's great. That's considered contribution, right? So that, in the beginning, we just like give you social recognition, but later we translated it into tokens. And then like once we have that loop established, we start looking at the builder retention loop, right? Whereby, hey, I contributed some stuff, great. I feel good about myself. And then, okay, I want to feel like better, I just like do more contribution, right? Basically back to the hook model I actually talked about. And then like, then the other aspects, right? Where like, okay, our DAO members don't really have like the capabilities to kind of pull off the next initiative. That's when the viral loops happen, right? And they kind of go out, find like specialists in their network and say, hey, can you come like help and contribute? And then finally, once we have like these 3 loops in place, then the DAO will start like, iterating through all the different variants of this value that we kind of like run and package as like a solution, and go to market with it, right? To test like the wealth creation loop. But it's like, hey, this particular solution, does the market actually find it valuable? If it does, great. You want to consume 1 unit of that value? Sure. Pay us some USDT, BTC, Ethereum? Sure. So in a nutshell, once you have like all these 4 loops in place, the whole thing just becomes like self-compounding. Like a self-sustaining, self-compounding, self-perpetuating like social network around a single cause, value, and why. Now, When you put the governance model and the economic model in place and allow it to compound over 6 months, literally this is what at least I got. Maybe you can like try it in your own project. I'll be curious to see what kind of like network would actually like form when you like apply this governance and economic model to your own project. Yeah. So yeah, in a nutshell, after 6 months, 400 like high impact contributors worldwide. Next step, which I kind of like hinted at just now. We want to DAO the world. We want to apply what we learn to help more folks who wants to benefit from our research. And to do that, we literally set up an end-to-end facility to support you. So Global DAO Alliance, we provide you with liquidity. TrueSight DAO, which is like what I actually talked about, we are doing a whole bunch of R&D to our governance to make sure like when you start adopting the model, your members actually like stay like motivated and like their incentives is aligned with their purpose. Then you have like Scribe DAO, which like helps you like update and manage your ledger. Earn Games, which is like basically an incubator and a launchpad. If you're kind of like doing play to earn, great. We'll like direct you to them. Meta 2032 focus on Metaverse projects. If you're doing like Metaverse projects, come talk to us. We'll direct you to them, and they can help you along. And then if you're doing like NFTs, yeah, we have like Niftians for that. Finally, once you're like kind of ready, all launched in the market, there's like Magic Square where you can like list your dApps for more traction. So to end, we are here to help you. And these 3 groups of people that we're kind of like making an assumption of. If you're a founder, we'll help your project get incubated and launched. If you're an investor, we help you find like projects that have good governance model that can perpetuate itself. And if you're a talent, we'll help you find positions in these projects, to actually like do some stuff that's actually interesting. Right? Life is short, right? Do stuff that's interesting. And yeah, so help yourself, man. This is like the QR code. Please scan it. Yeah, yeah. And we'll see you in the Telegram group. Now I'm ready for Q&A. Anyone? Oh, yes, please. Is there a mic for him? Perfect.
Well, that was fascinating. Thank you. I've been kind of sitting with this question of, as organizations, hierarchical organizations actually move to Web3 decentralized, what are those, because we know these structures so well, but these structures are just emerging.
Yes.
And you are a part of that world that's creating that new organization 3.0 or whatever we want to call it. And so I'm curious, first of all, how mature do you think this transition is today?
Wait, sorry, you got...
How mature is this transition from a General Electric or a Microsoft where you have structures, processes, people, talent, leadership development, like it's all clear, organization structures, that model, the corporate model is clear.
Yes.
And it's been there for 100-odd years.
Yes.
And this is a new model of organizing people and work and, having a North Star and, working together, collaboration. How mature do you think this new model is question 1. And 2 is how long is it going to take us to transition from the hierarchical, political, greed-based, whatever you want to call it, right? Where a few people are making decisions, essentially, to this model that actually truly works.
Okay, cool. Let me answer like question 1. I would say actually we are at a very early stage, right? Just like look at this governance model and like this economic model. It's like 6 months old now. But it's like, here's the interesting thing, right? In terms of like length of time. Let me give you a good example. Netflix, Reed Hastings. When he like first founded like the videos, like he's like saying, hey, we believe that in the future everyone's gonna like watch videos on their computer, and no one's gonna like rent like VCRs anymore. That vision eventually came true, but when they first like predicted it, they said, okay, it's gonna like happen in 10 years, right? But actually after 10 years, still not there yet because the technology was not really like there. But After 10 years, they said, maybe another 7 years since it took so long. Here's the funny thing, though. Like, the inflection point actually only took an additional, like, 2 years. That's the nature of, like, technology, right? It's like when you kind of, like, it actually follows this exponential curve. So if you as a person says, I'm going to, like, take whatever I'm seeing now and kind of, like, do an extrapolation, it's kind of, like, generally be linear, right? But if you kind of, like, try to do the exponential curve, you say, okay, earlier, later, it's just generally it's just going to be off. What I'm seeing, though, is that it'll probably be like sooner than we realize. A huge portion of it has to do with like the pandemic, and another part of it, right, has been to do with like this cycle that started since 2008. It's like 2008, right? Pandemic happened. We had like the K-curve recovery. White-collar guys actually got more jobs, got more pay. And like those guys, they're kind of like not really part of like that. They just like went down, and then like we just passed through like the latest pandemic, which was 2020. Same shit happened again. It actually got more emphasized, right? So part of what I did during those 4 years, I was literally living as a homeless. Technically, it's like there was like one part where I just moved into my car and just drove around the whole U.S. in my car, and it's like some nights I was just like be sleeping in my car, and across the street is like this whole entire homeless colony in front of me. I think to myself, oh man, this economic model that we have is totally fucked up, right? Those guys, they're not being served. It's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's like, we are kind of optimizing for profit margins right now. Optimize, like, the word is optimizing. But it's like too much optimization, right? It's like you have like a Y, which is good, made sense during the industrial era, but like kind of like right now, we already transitioned to the information age, right? Whereas like literally network effects and information takes all. So we have to recalibrate the value of which we are optimizing our economic model for. So hence, this thing that we are like working on right now becomes like super important. Because if not done properly, the human population is going to become like the horse population back in the US when like the steam engine got invented. You know what happened within a decade? The population of horses literally dropped by 90%. Most of them killed. You actually want that to happen to your fellow human being? No, I think it's fucked up. So we need to like put our muscles behind it and just like push it forward. All right, more questions?
Oh, hi. Okay, so guys, we have something, an impromptu that we're going to do for you.
Cool.
This is what we're going to do. I'm actually going to invite Marco
Yeah.
from Blockchain Lab back on stage to do more Q&A. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Are you guys okay with that? Awesome. Marco, I'd like to invite you back onto the stage and we can have more Q&A since we have time and we just want to provide more value add to you guys.
2 minutes, perfect.
So if anyone has any questions, if you could just pass the
Gostujući
mic over.
profesor na Univerzitetu umetnosti, oni su napravili.
Awesome. Come on up, Micah. Thank you. Any questions, guys? Right back over there. Thank you.
First of all, hi everybody. My name is Marko Suverjic. I had a presentation at 1:30. The topic was art and blockchain. So any questions about art, blockchain, but also I'm a director of a research lab at University of Florida. So education, blockchain research, art, just topics.
Okay.
One second. We'll take that question first in the back, and then we'll come to you.
Okay. I'm trying to formalize that question correctly. You're trying actually to attack multiple things with the governance model you're proposing. It's not related to NFTs. It's not related to blockchain. It sounds awesome. I'm interested in how is your system going to limit the corruption and value. You're trying basically to build a meritocracy, something like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. How is it devaluating corruption or trying not to help corruption grow.
All right. So basically, I guess the question is directed at me, yeah? Okay. So actually, here's the interesting thing, right? I could see a few ways it could potentially get corrupted. One is like if the scribes like start like somewhat influencing like you know the way the contributions are recorded on the ledger, or like, mainly it's just that, right? That like literally is like okay, when you kind of get to that level, is like basically the whole governance model is like compromised. That's why you really want like a whole bunch of scribes that's actually doing the scoring that actually no one knows who, right? It's like some manner of anonymity. And then like another like way that could potentially get corrupted is whereby, well, you did a contribution, but no one actually like recognized that as a contribution and put it on the ledger. See? But otherwise, like if it's kind of like all recorded on the ledger, and since like it's 100% transparency and 100% accountable, that particular like happy path, its integrity has been protected. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
And then we have a question up front with this gentleman.
Yeah, like that.
Hi, everyone. I actually have a question for both of you. And first of all, let me give a little bit of a context. I'm Vlatko, I'm CEO of Earn Games, and I'm part of the Global DAO Alliance. And we have a search quest, actually, which we call Triple H, in discovery of the hipsters, hackers, and hustlers. We believe that the future will have three main professions. Everything else will disappear. Yeah. Those are the builders, the tech people that work with social sciences, that work with natural sciences. The second arm is the creatives, which I believe you're a part of. And the alliance between the builders and the creatives is something that is essential to our future and our tomorrow. The third one is caretakers, which Gary and I have contemplated so much on, but we won't go into that detail currently. Now, considering all of the NFT craze and all of these artists coming to whatever concepts, selling art, digital, whatever, however you want to call it, like JPEGs or IFPS links, whatever, not to go into those details. How can we, the question is to both of you, and when I guess first the creative can start, and then Gary, you can take it onwards. How can we bring more utility and value to all of these NFTs and collections that are kind of pretty, right? We make a hype around them, we sell them, but then afterwards we dig into it deeper. There is not much really to it. I mean, the couple that kind of stand outside of that environment is Bored Ape Yacht Club and Moonbirds. How can you bring more value to these artistic, I would say, beautiful JPEGs?
Thank you. Well, two-part answer. First, within the creatives and developers, I think that this space is calling for a hybrid people. So my undergraduate degree is in computer sciences, but then I got my master's in fine art. And I teach digital arts and sciences. I teach classes in video games, in blockchain, and entrepreneurship. So I think that people who will be successful will be hybrid. And people who will not be successful, at least not in the long term, are people who are trying to figure out what's going on, but it's really more about a hype than anything else. And I think that that's what's happening right now. When we talk about value, there is a certain curve to any hype, and we are now maybe past the top of the hype around NFTs. Now, the question really is, where is that going to go in the next few years or few decades? And I believe that it's going to continue going up, but at a much more steadier pace as we start creating digital economy around the creative economy in a kind of a matter-of-fact kind of way, rather than oh my gosh, I have to really get this done, and everything has to be on NFT, and everything is going to be thousands or millions of dollars or something like that. It will be just a technology that allows us to trade art, to buy art, and to sell art, just as we did before, except obviously better for many, many reasons. But art will still have to earn its own value on its own, not just because it's an NFT. So now we have CryptoKitties and Bored Apes and stuff like that that will be always valuable because they were among the first ones. They have their place in history, so they will be very valuable. But there are also thousands and thousands, if not millions, of other NFTs that, I mean, if they were not an NFT and somebody just showed it to me, I really wouldn't care much about it, to be honest. So, you know, obviously a lot of people are trying to jump on that train, and there's just not enough seats on that train for everybody, and that is okay. We do want to have some kind of a quality control of what's moving forward. And in terms of how do we create better value, how do we make sure that this does not die because it seems all hype and no substance, well, first of all, I think education is really important. People need to understand, A, what is an NFT, when does it work, how do I make one, what are the best places for it. I personally believe that NFT's future is digital, not necessarily so much in representing the objects in this world, even though those will happen and Gucci will have their shoes with little sensors and you buy NFT shoes and stuff like that. But I would buy those shoes because I want to buy Gucci shoes, not because I want an NFT. And ultimately, the NFTs will be used, but as part of video games, as part, you know, like when I get my avatar and I get a new hat or something like that, I want that hat to be mine, and I want to be able to trade it with you, and I want to have proved ownership of that. So I think that now that hype seems a little bit over, we'll have 2-3 years to build upon what has happened and to build a true, genuine economy that will keep going into the future pretty strong and pretty steady. I think the biggest questions will be, will we all live on the same protocol? Is everybody going to be on Ethereum? We'll see. I was in Denver just a few months ago for ETH Denver. Vitalik was there. He promised that Ethereum 2.0 is going to be launched this year. We'll see. But we certainly need some solutions for the very high transaction fees right now on Ethereum network. Or is everybody going to move to other protocols like Polygon or Algorand or, you know, Near and stuff like that? So these are kind of questions that, you know, it's a fun time to be alive and to kind of witness and to see what's going to happen in the next few years, when it's kind of hard to predict the future. But again, more conferences like this, more classes from not hype YouTube videos, but real classes, project-oriented hackathons will bring us all from equivalent of where internet was in the 90s with the crazy bubble hype to where internet became in 2005 and 2010 with kind of a Web 2.0. And I think we're still waiting for that, and we're calling it Web 3.0 or Web 3. It's happening, but it will take some time for that to mature.
Cool. So basically, like what he actually mentioned is like a common, we have like a common term to kind of like describe it back in Silicon Valley, right? With any new like raw technology, there's always the hype curve, and then it comes crashing down, right? So if you kind of like rode it, great, man. Just make sure you like kind of get out of the top. But usually, like when the crash happens, it's kaboom, kind of like what you saw like last week with Luna. So like same cycle happened, right? 2000, it was like early 2000, it was like 2000 .com bubble. It's like pets.com, man, astronomical valuation, kaboom, came down. And then like after that, okay, all the people, like the dumb money kind of like exited, right? They kind of like, oh shit, this is like stupid. No one's gonna do any shit about this anymore. Web is done, dead. It is only at that phase, right, when we actually like start getting more sense and more pragmatic people, like systems people come in, actually like start focusing on the utility curve. And at the start, right, for when you actually like recall history, after like the dot-com bust, 2000, literally when you go like to Silicon Valley, like nothing was happening for a good 4 years, right? Even those like tech workers were like literally struggling until like somewhere along the way you start having like some semblance of life, and then eventually there's more and there's more, and then it's like, is there actually like something going on or not, right? And then come 2009, Facebook IPO, and then kaboom! We are like right in the middle of the utility. It's like that second half of the utility curve, right? But actually during like those 9 years, a lot of stuff happened. What happened? Use cases. Entrepreneurs, not the marketers, but entrepreneurs who literally saw this like tool, and they actually started going back to their community and actually applying this tool to specific needs, right, in the community. It's actually like, I would say like these use cases are not even for me to see, right? It's like for like the person like, let's say in like Uganda, who's actually like living like day in, day out in Uganda, who actually understands the pain points of those folks there. They will like naturally like see this too, it's like, oh, okay, I could actually apply this. And it's like, it's through this kind of like decentralized, organic application of tools that's discovered for actual practical use cases that's going to like drive up that curve. And right now, NFT, great, man. Art, perfect. But I would say we're kind of like still a long way off, man. It's like people are like not really understanding the actual application of NFTs. You know? It's like when you like look at it from the engineering perspective, literally it's kind of like a JSON object written into some like blockchain address. And right now, we're just kind of using it to point to like some location on the web to like pull in like some images. But the way I would see it, right, is like, look, just like take, for example, your access card to get into the building. Every single of your information is actually stored in some central database. And one day, if like that database goes down, you try to access the building, oops, no way to get in, right? You're kind of like fucked. You probably have to like sleep out there in the streets tonight. But what if we can say that, hey, decentralize that database, so it suddenly becomes like fault tolerant from day one, right? Like literally like the kind of like infrastructure that Chase Bank or like the major banks like credit card, right? Visa, Masters, they have around the world. It's like in case like one entire region goes down, there's always like a backup network. To like set up something like this is actually very, very expensive if you are like a new startup. But imagine if you have like a whole bunch of chains, right, which we already have, that is already distributed from day one, right? And you kind of implement such a protocol on that. Then you could literally say, hey, you know what? We actually have this use case. You can then now get into your building with like this NFT loaded into your phone. And in case one node goes down, it's okay, no problem. Like all the other few thousand nodes are still up, right? Literally like what we have like in our DNS like systems today. You know? It's like, okay, one name server goes down. Oh, no problem. I go to like TrueSight.me. I can still access my server because like that's like decentralized. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I see like the future of NFTs. But regarding like creatives, I'm not really sure. Maybe like one way I can see it is like it's back to like symbolism, right? Every community, every subculture, they have their own symbolism. And the way I would see it, art, right, should not be actually like sitting up there in some like abstract like space. What could potentially like happen is that, okay, this artist within their own community can like create this and like amongst themselves actually represent something, right? Whatever the utility is not for us to say, it's like for that community to say, right? They can say, oh wow, this is like icon of like a binoculars. Cool, I'm like part of this community. When I look at that, the symbolism actually means something for me and actually makes it clear, right? It's like basically back to UI, UX. Okay, binoculars, it means I've used this in, say, reading like news, and it's like, okay, basically magnifies like whatever is there. It's kind of like some UX experience. So yeah, that's my answer to you, Vlatko.
Is there time for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for both presentations, really, really interesting and insightful. This one's for Gary. So let's say I'm a contributor to a DAO, and I get scored on some contributions I've made, and I don't agree with them, the score. Can you talk about moderation in that case?
Oh, yeah. The way we kind of like do it right now is that we have this like channel, this channel in our DAO's like server that says, okay, I appeal this, right? And as soon as it's appealed, right, we have like 72 hours for like the subject matter experts to come in, like we elect 3 from our DAO and say, what's this? Is it misclassified? And that's like the start of the whole appeal process. And if they don't resolve it within 72 hours, then we like go into the moderation. This whole process is actually designed by Vlatko, by the way. It's like 72 hours. Like from 72 hours, it becomes like 48 hours, where like one subject matter experts focus on that, right? And if we still can't resolve it, then basically like we kind of like open up a vote for a popular vote. That means at that point, it's already past like what, 5 days? So all the DAO members should know kind of like what's going on, right? And then popular vote at that point like makes sense. And it's like ties down to like how many tokens you have holding, and that basically determines the outcome.
Thank you so much, Gary and Marco. And well, to end on this, Marco, can you help us with, a lot of these founders are coming into the NFT space. It's their early entry point, so they're coming across a lot of challenges, and so we all know that every single professional always started off as an amateur. Can you share with us some inspirational words that you would like to pass on to those that are really struggling but want to make it in this space?
I guess this is going to be another two-part answer. One is the pragmatic one, and another one is, I guess, a genuine about anything that you want to do. And when we talk about pragmatic ones, it's, NFT, there is an opportunity. And I think that a lot of people have gotten into NFTs because of that opportunity. And somebody who is early on, it's a huge barrier of entry. First technical one, and the second one, you are one of the 10,000 people who have an NFT on OpenSea or some other market, right? And at that point, it becomes the same game as any other in terms of, okay, I have a painting, I have a sculpture, I need to somehow gain visibility. And then we're back to the regular PR and advertising. The beautiful moment comes when some traction occurs. Because when some traction occurs and there is any level of recognition, at that moment, actually on the level that is relatively, in beginning, there is opportunity to negotiate with different protocols. Because right now, what is happening, and we talked about this similarity with internet revolution and boom, is the competition for content. So all these different protocols are realizing that who has content, who has community will survive. So they're willing to sponsor artists to create NFTs exclusively on their platform. So in this space, one thing I can tell you is there's no room for being shy. There's no room for, well, I don't know if I should really push myself. The worst thing that can happen is you get to hear no. Okay, you're back to where you started. So if you look at a top 50 protocols right now, different 50 coins, and you go to their websites, more than half of them have small grants that are usually up to $50,000. I know that Near has it, I know that Algorand has it, I know the Polygon has it. And they're willing to help new projects, new artists who are willing to jump on their platform. So it's a fair amount of work to get in, and then fair amount of work to knock at the door of all these different protocols, but that is the way forward. On a less practical and more generic advice, poet Maria Rainer Rilke talks about being an artist or a writer, and the first thing he says, don't do it. It's a terrible thing. You do something that you care about a lot, and very few people may care about that. And if you do want to do it only if your soul makes you want to do it. That if nothing ever happens nobody ever reads your poem, nobody ever looks at your NFT, that you are happy that you gave birth to that NFT, to that art piece. So if one starts from that point of view, you cannot lose, because the success is not measured by finances, but by the creative expression. So it's a very healthy place to start. And if the goal is to make money, that's okay too, but that's a different type of art, right? And at that moment, you become more of a producer than an artist. And at that moment, you're building a business around it, you're promoting it, and approaching it in a different way. You have like a business plan approach. So those two things. One, make sure that's what you really want to spend your time on. So if you fail, you don't feel bad about it. And two,
True.
you got to work on it. You have to create substantial portfolio that you have identity. And then you have to package it in something that can be shared with potential investors who will then help you boost your career. So think of it as yourself being a product or a startup that is looking for funding.